Good afternoon and welcome to the Arthur C. Banks Junior Library at Capitol Community College. My name is Carl Antonucci. I'm the library director, and I'm very pleased that such a great attendance today to our rededication ceremony. I'm going to act as the master of ceremonies, and in your program you have our brief program that we're going to have today. And I'd like to begin by welcoming the president of Capitol Community College, Dr. Calvin E. Woodland, who's going to welcome you.
Thank you, Carl, and good afternoon. Good afternoon, friends of Capitol, colleagues, and it certainly is a great pleasure to welcome you all to Capitol Community College on the occasion of the rededication of this library in the name of Dr. Arthur C. Banks, Jr. And certainly I want to send a special welcome to Danette Daniels, Dr. Banks' stepdaughter, whom I've had the pleasure to meet on several occasions. She's joined us this afternoon, and her family. Her husband and son are with her this afternoon. So I want to extend a special greeting to President Emeritus Dr. Mallett. Did he join us? Yes. Yes. Dr. Mallett, welcome. And also President Emeritus Dr. Booker Devon, who served also as interim president here at Capitol and president at Northwestern and Three Rivers Community College. And certainly extend a special welcome to our Chancellor, Chancellor Herzog, who's joined us. And also our other guests include Walter Markowitz, Provost Emeritus. And also we have other members of our foundation board, Lou Robinson, is always supporting the college. We have friends from the community, including Mr. and Mrs. Rollins, and I know I'm going to forget some names, so I'm going to extend a broad welcome to our friends from the larger community, members of the faculty and staff who joined us this afternoon. We're also expecting a visit from the city, Councilwoman Veronica Area Wilson. I don't know if she's joined us yet. And also Assistant Chancellor Marion Cox has joined us. And a special welcome to Dr. Devon's wife, Elena, Dr. Elena Devon. Thanks for joining us. Arriving at Capitol 3 years ago, I quickly discovered that Dr. Banks' influence was all around us. As the first president of what was then known as Greater Hartford Community College, he established the gold standard for education for all of Connecticut's citizens. Dr. Banks was adamant that affordable, quality programs and courses were offered to our students at all times, and insisted that faculty and staff remain first rate. Obviously, that still holds true. Dr. Banks brokered the college's move from an original campus in Colt Park to a more attractive, spacious campus near St. Francis Hospital, and I'm sure he would be thrilled to see the college thriving in this magnificent building. That students of all ages, backgrounds, and abilities are offered life-altering opportunities to enrich their lives is the legacy of Dr. Banks. Every student that walks through the door of this library that bears his name has that chance, and thanks to him, there's nothing more important. And now I'm happy to introduce you to my colleague, Mary Ann Affleck, the Capitol Academic Dean. And some of you may be aware that Dean Affleck has more than a passing acquaintance with this library, but I'll let her tell you about that. Mary Ann, thank you.
Dr. Mallett used to say that I thought this whole institution was the library, but I know better. This is a college, and what makes a college successful is a compelling vision for the academic program. Arthur Banks had such a vision. He saw Capitol Community College as a liberal arts institution where students would get a rounded education as a full human being and have the credentials to transfer to a four-year university. That vision still guides our academic program. The faculty have recently articulated a set of general education learning outcomes that Arthur Banks would be proud of. that describe a Capital graduate as someone engaged fully with his community, able to write and speak effectively, think critically, team with others, be part of a diverse community. This is an articulation of the full vision of Dr. Banks. In addition, his vision of our students transferring has truly come to fruition in the last few years with guaranteed admissions agreements with both the University of Connecticut and the Connecticut State University. I have to say also that Dr. Banks still inspires the faculty. They will still quote him. They will still cite his vision. You can see them represented in large numbers here today. He guides this institution that I think is really central to the economic and educational life of this city, a lasting gift, a legacy, and so I say thank you to the man for whom we named my favorite place in this building, the Arthur Banks. It's the Arthur Banks Junior Library. It's not the Arthur Banks Junior Library, as they used to tease me. Thank you very much.
I'd like to introduce John McNamara, the Director of Institutional Advancement, and he's going to give greetings from the Capital Community College Foundation. John?
Thanks very much, Carl. Actually, President Woodland stole a bit of my speech. I was going to acknowledge many of the dignitaries here, and I thank him for that. But I do want to send greetings from the foundation. Lou Robinson from our board is here, Susan Rand Brown. I believe Bob Hickey is going to join us. He's not here already. Immediate past chair. And the foundation has made great strides, and it includes one of our endowments, in addition to this library, being the How We Remember President Banks. A few years ago, we renamed our first scholarship endowment after him, and it's given annually to student interested in the liberal arts, which I think is a good reflection of the kind of education Dr. Banks believed in. And I don't have everybody's name here, but how many of the retired faculty were actually hired by Dr. Banks? Raise your hands. Okay. We're hearing from Ray Marafino in a moment. And I just do want to say, in addition to, there goes the microphone, the community college system was created in Connecticut in 1966 by an act of the legislature. A year later, President Banks started the college on High Ship Avenue with 388 students. I do very well in Trivial Pursuit when we talk about the college. The movement, the civil rights movement, and the community college system got going at the same time in this country. And when you look at President Banks' background, he was the first African-American president of a college in Connecticut, and he was a real trailblazer in that regard. So I think the community college movement and the civil rights movement grew up, and now community colleges are an indispensable part of communities just about everywhere. So I think that's the legacy. That's why this library is named after him. That's why we have scholarship funds, and we'll always remember him. But I do want to acknowledge all the faculty emeriti here today, and also we have faculty still going who were there way back when. You're going to hear from Professor Marafino in a moment. But thank you all for coming. Booker Devon, our interim president before President Woodland got here, and his wife, Dr. Mallet, and his wife Claudia, who I've known for many years. They're great friends. We have a lot of history in the room, and we're going to hear about it now. And we'll be hearing something from a family member in California a bit later in the program that I'll be sharing with you. Thank you very much.
Next, I'd like to introduce a Professor of Humanities, Ray Marafino, who's going to give greetings from the faculty. Ray?
I'm one of the ones who didn't retire. I was telling Mark before that my wife just retired after a long time. She started when she was 3, I think. I'm the dumb one in the family. I'm still here. So, but I am bringing you personal comments. I didn't consult with any faculty members. Maybe I should have.
That's a no-no.
I know it's a no-no. I'm reminded of leadership when I think of, I'm always reminded of leadership when I think of Arthur C. Banks, Jr. I talk often with some of our old colleagues, Ron Pepin. I see periodically and inevitably we talk about Dr. Banks. And I don't want to go on too far mentioning all these people because though I insisted that my remarks be down to about 3 minutes, John said I had 3 hours.
I did.
Look at the fear. But Jane Bronfman said I was to limit it to 2.5 hours, so I'll keep it at about 3 minutes. When I look at the current presidential candidates and witness on the television the food fights, I'm reminded of leadership again, and what a difference there is between what I'm witnessing, personal view, and what I witnessed with Dr. Banks when I was hired here in 1969. He was new, the first president. I don't mean to, here, maybe I'll stand here. I'm not good behind, I get nervous behind it. Can you hear me? All right. He was the first president. It was a new college, and many of us coming onto the campus were in our first job, or, well, I had about 5, but that's another story. You don't want to hear that story. And Frank Ceremonies and others came on, and we were new faculty, at least, to colleges and so forth and so on. And it was interesting to me to see what Dr. Banks did relative to leadership, which I think is crucial in any institution. And what he did was, and I'm sure it was replicated in other colleges, we can hope, probably wasn't in some. What he did was to create a system here of evolution, where we learned together how to either fight each other forever. And I think he was smart enough to know that if he had not allowed the natural leadership of the faculty and staff to evolve in its own way, he would have been fighting some of us forever. That is stupid. Nobody wants that, and he was not a stupid man. He was very intelligent. So what did he do? He allowed natural leadership to evolve in its own way, creating a situation which we see well, not the end result, I hope it's not the end. We see the continuing results here, and that's maybe why I'm still here. Thank you.
Next on our program, we have a brief video of the 1988 dedication of the Arthur C. Banks Jr. Library at Woodland Street. And if you can't see, I'm sorry about the small screen, but you might want to move up for the short video presentation.
He's really a very, very special gentleman, great warmth and wit and charm.
Things that I would like very much if someday the library could be named after me.
He made an impact on his college, on his system, and on his state in his time. He really made a difference.
It is most fitting that this library be dedicated to Dr. Arthur C. Banks, Jr. because he cared and cares about the students who use it.
There's no one more alive, more vital, more of a continuing contributor to the benefits of Greater Hartford Community College than Dr. Banks.
As usual, Walter misquotes me. I did not say I missed a damn school. What I really said was, I missed the people. It's the people. And even though Conrad's been here just a couple of years, I'm even beginning to miss him because he seems to have fit in as a person who will do anything to make the school go. So I want to reiterate, it's the people like this, not sitting down at that desk up there or getting that awful coffee in the morning. And by the way, I still make the coffee like I used to. It's the people. Elsie, Sam, oh, I can go down with this. It's something to be associated with people who, when you walk in the door in the morning, you can see on their faces, I'll do everything to make this a better college. That's what I was privileged to have experienced all these years. And God, I'll miss you forever. Thank you for this. Thank you for what you're doing now. And frankly speaking, it wasn't necessary, but you better have done something about it.
And to close our program today, I'd just like to thank a few people that helped make this event possible. On the back of your program lists the committee members, and we had a really great committee. I want to thank them personally. We worked really well together. Jane Brofman, John McNamara, Amy Meisterling, and James Plord for helping us. I also want to thank Mike Bees and the staff of Academic Media Technology for help with the video and the setup today and videotaping for us. I also like to thank the library staff for help. They help me day in and day out to provide information services to the students, faculty, and staff here at the library, and all of them worked at the other building. I worked there briefly on Woodland Street. Greg Clone, our technical services librarian, Claire O'Connor, reference librarian, Karen DeLoach, head of our LTA program and head of library instruction, and Lean Tran, head of circulation. I'd like to thank them for all their great work here in the new facility. Also like to thank Dr. Woodland for his support of the library, and of course Dr. Affleck, who's always supportive of me and what we want to do here at the library to make it a real center of learning here at the college. And at this point, we thought we'd invite anyone in the audience, especially family members or any people that worked with Dr. Banks, to come up and share some brief memories of Dr. Banks. And I know that John McNamara has an email from his son that he'd like to share with you.
Anybody? Okay, thank you. Yes, I've had several conversations with President Banks' son, Arthur, over the last 48 hours, and he was kind enough to write a very eloquent tribute to his dad that I'd like to read a few portions of. Interesting, I hadn't seen the video in a while, but he clearly remembered that dedication of the library, saying, in speaking of his retirement, he was paraphrasing, he almost got it word for word. He didn't give a damn about the office or his title he held, but that he missed profoundly the people, his friends, co-workers, educators, associates. He missed the people. But he was grateful that we did remember him by naming the library after him, as you heard. But Arthur wrote some very great remembrances of his dad, and he says, in part, for me, and I got this from Dad, your friend and President Emeritus, a library is a repository of history, sciences, and arts of human life, living and giving. Early on, my brother and I were in Baltimore's libraries. I guess he was a Johns Hopkins alumnus. With reading, life and study becomes bearable and more enjoyable, more of an adventure, and not to be endured, but really lived in greater harmony with others. People become, taught by my father, I see now, more reasonable and open and reader teachable. He also just wanted to say that with Danette and Jim and the other members of the family here today, that he is very gratified to know that the faculty, the new president, well, you're not so new anymore, right? And administrators of this excellent young college will continue the tradition of offering the good life and learning to people of all ethnicities in Hartford and its environs, and a tradition begun by the smiling, dashing, well-spoken, elegant big man I am pleased to have known as my father, in whose shadow I grew. So those are very nice words, and I have the whole text of it for anybody who would like to see it. With those words, I'd invite any faculty present or emeriti to come up and say a few words within the time constraints of Professor Marafino. Okay, Joan.
I'm not afraid of microphones. I am Janet Frost. I teach chemistry here, and I was hired by Dr. Banks way back long ago in the dark, dark past. And I wanted to share a little bit of a story about him. He did have a vision, as Marianne said, and that was wonderful to work for a person with a vision like that. He was also an outspoken person. One time, he described himself as an old crocodile. And that may not sound, that was really a wonderful thing, because he really was that. He was this enormous, huge person who sat on the bank above the pool where the rest of us swam. This is how it worked. As long as you behaved yourself, he was no one nicer. The minute you started squabbling or fighting or doing something that he figured was not in the best interest of the schools, he just smashed his jaws a little bit, and peace was restored. Progress took place in this benevolent situation for me. It was a wonderful place. I felt very safe in the pool because I knew back up on that bank was that great granddaddy, and he wasn't going to let anything happen to his little fish. So I loved being his employee, or his being mentored by him, being here. It was a wonderful experience for me, and I would like to thank him for the opportunity to do that. And I'd like to thank my department chairman, who is in the front row, Dr. Ramachadavetti, who was also instrumental in hiring me. So thank you very much, Dr. Banks.
I'm Peter Worsthorn, a member of the Science and Mathematics Department. Indeed, Dr. Banks had a presence. His mantra was quality education. And there are so many very, very wonderful phrases that he had. For example, he was a very strong supporter of the liberal arts, of education as opposed to training. And I remember in a meeting when members of the public were present, he said, "We're not in the business of training tire cappers." Or in another case, when we were trying to move downtown, there was an attempt to place us in a building that almost overhung an entrance to Route 84, a totally inadequate facility. He said, "How dare they do that to us?" Or on another occasion, you can give a man free speech, but you can't give him speech. I owe a lot to Dr. Banks. The highest compliment is I learned from him. We learned from him. The institution learned from him. As the twig is bent, so grows the tree. The tree continues to grow. He bent it in a wonderful direction. Thank you.
Any other memories or reflections?
My name's Lou Robinson, and as was mentioned earlier by Calvin and John, I'm a member of the Foundation Board of Directors and serve proudly. I have a very different story. About 2 years ago, I was part of a crew sailing a boat from Connecticut up to Boothday Harbor, Maine. I don't own a boat, but a few people in Connecticut know that if you're short crew and there's free food, Lou Robinson will crew your boat happily. At any rate, it was sailors love to sail whatever the weather, but it happened to be a real driving rain. So we're spending a lot of time pulling lines back and forth. There was a guy in the crew that I hadn't met before. He was a friend of the skipper, my friend. And we got around Buzzards Bay, and we started chatting, and how do you know this guy and that, and where are you from, etc. And he told me this amazing story about when he was in Atlanta, Georgia, and he met a Dr. Banks. And did I know Dr. Banks? And I said, well, I only know of him. I came to Hartford in the early 70s. So he started to tell me these long stories about how in Atlanta, Georgia, at Morehouse, they would have these extended conversations that went on into the night, and how he, a white Southerner, was transformed by those various conversations. And so much so that later, after he'd finished a doctorate, he did his name was Mason Lowance. He did an anthology of slave narratives. And a few weeks later, after I dried out from this sail, I received a copy of that. And it sat on my bookcase for a long time. But I sat down and read it about a year later. And when I got through it, I said, now, isn't this amazing? I'm reading an anthology of slave narratives given to me by a white Southerner who was inspired to write it by a brother named Arthur Banks that I never met. And I'm inspired by that. And lo and behold, it dawned on me that I'm now on the foundation board for the college where he was president. And I thought, what an absolutely powerful man this had to be to influence generations of people, so that right here, right now, today, I stand here as a person who never personally met him, but was profoundly moved by my experience with a sailing buddy, and further by reading the slave narratives that Lowance put together. That's mine.
I'm going to try to do this without getting emotional. I don't know any of you except for Danette and her family. My name is Joan Stevens, and I am the courtesy niece of Uncle Arthur. I grew up in Atlanta. My parents taught at Atlanta University, and Uncle Arthur was like a substitute father for me. When I listened to your remarks, especially your remarks about the crocodile, there was an unavoidable presence about Uncle Arthur, who was, for me, a really loving, wonderful presence for me in my life. One thing that I think is critical about him is that he had his own opinions, and he would not go with the flow, and he would assert that he believed this, and he didn't care who thought differently from him. And we would have these, he would send me books or call me on the phone and say, I read this in the New York Times, what do you think, and da-na-na-na-na-na. So he was a really strongly opinionated as well as very loving man. But as Danette can testify, there was one person in his life who could keep him in line, and that was her mom. And one of our favorite expressions for us, for my husband, who is here as well, and our kids, and we would go and spend time with him, going back and forth from here to Vermont, where we have, from Philadelphia, where we're from, to Vermont, where we have a summer home. So we would stop to see Uncle Arthur, and Bertha, his wife, and Danette's mom, would listen to him for a while, and finally she would say, "Get quiet, Arthur, get quiet, Arthur." And then he would pull himself together and harumph around the way he did, and he would get quiet. So there was one presence who could put the lid on this really strong, wonderful, and very loving man whom I miss a great deal.
So in honor of this special occasion today, we lifted the no food and drink rule in the library. and also the quiet rule. So we invite you to partake in some refreshments and hear some of our classical music selections. Thank you.